Recording in progress.
Awesome. Hey everyone, I'm Michael. I'm here with Hazel, and we decided to study for this project the Medellin Metrocable, and I'm going to walk you through the characteristics of the city and also the public transport system in Medellin. So Medellin was founded in the 1600s, being the second largest city and metropolitan region in Colombia. So it's around 4 million people, according to the 2018 census. And it's important to understand that the city developed along the Abuja Valley, which is surrounded by mountains, and the occupation of these mountains is really key for you to understand this public transport system. As other Latin American cities, Medellin grew intensely since the Industrial Revolution, with a great influx since the 1950s. And of course, with this huge growth, a lot of informal neighborhoods and also houses being constructed in the outskirts of the towns, called comunas, also another important key point in our presentation. And due to the history of Colombia, with a lot of national political turmoil, a lot of influx of migration of displaced rural peasants, economic downturns, and the problem with drug cartel and gang presence in Colombia, which is also true for other Latin American countries, we had a lot of urban violence, making Medellin to be considered the most violent cities in the 80s in the world. And after the death of Pablo Escobar, I think he was the biggest drug dealer in the world, the city could address a lot of their problems and a lot of the social conditions, being really innovative in how to deal with this. And Metrocable is one of those innovations. Here we show you how the city transformed and how the occupation of the valley was transformed over the years, and how it grew in the last 80 years. So you can see from 1826 to how it is nowadays.
So the Metrocable was created in 2004. It was as part of this big suite of public service investments, including parks and libraries and new approaches to community safety in terms of policing, lighting in the neighborhoods, et cetera. But the Metrocable was really a huge part of this, because what it did was it connected for the first time the people living in these comunas to Medellin as a broader city in the valley. And so it brought in people who had been previously very isolated because it was a very long walk to get down there, or an unreliable bus ride, because the metro rail system itself cannot go up those hills into the cities. They could access jobs, they could access cultural services, and vice versa. It brought people from the city into the comunas. So there was a cross-cultural collaboration and benefit as well. Metrocable was the first city in the world to include a cable car system in its public transportation network. And that was really successful. A lot of other cities around the world, a lot of them in Latin America, including Rio de Janeiro, La Paz, Caracas, copied the system to address their own unique topography conditions, because they saw such success with the Metrocable. So here's what it looks like on the map. You can see that these Metrocable lines are running out into the steeper valley parts, and you can see that the accessibility of the valley really doubles in terms of who is able to access their public transportation system, which is how we're defining accessibility, is bringing people into new destinations, allowing them to reach activities by means of transportation modes. And the combination is important too, because the Metrocable is integrated with the rest of the public transportation system. You could use your same cable card or your same civic payment card to access the buses, access the bike share, access the rail, access the metro cables. So it's very easy to use as well, and cheap. So in terms of access, yeah, it's a new mode share where there wasn't one before in the very already widely used public transportation system. So high adoption right away. It connected hundreds of thousands of new residents who were living in different neighborhoods and districts on the outskirts of Medellin, bringing them into the city. In doing so, that got Medellin a lot of praise for efforts at social inclusion and equitable mobility, because it's part of the public transportation system. It's accessible to a broad range of people. And socially, it had a lot of great benefits as well. People are very proud of the Metrocable stations. Where the stations are, it becomes this destination neighborhood. Tourists go visit, there's economic activity, people can sell things at the stations, as well as taking people who live in the comunas into the city to work in different jobs.
Well, a lot of what I'm going to talk here was already greatly discussed by Hazel, but we're going to organize what we see in terms of like strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, or SWOT analysis. So what we see in terms of strengths for this for the system is the expansion of economic, social, and geographic opportunities for those who live in the on the comunas. So it's important to be affordable, that it reaches geographical and challenging areas. It's integrated with the system. I think we talked about it. Very easy to use. The opportunities they create, and like how the geographic expansion of the places you can visit in your city. But we also have to talk about the weaknesses. So there is a limit in the capacity that the number of people that the transportation system can carry. So only 2,000 people per hour. So of course there is a limited coverage within the comunas, not those neighborhoods, because it's only a space. So if you live close to the station, it's amazing. But if you live far from the stations, you still need to walk, sometimes a lot, sometimes you need to take a minibus, increasing the price you need to pay to use the system and go to the city. Much better than before, but also it's still a challenge. In terms of opportunities, there is expansion to other areas. If you see the city transportation plans, you see there are new lines being planned. A new line was just opened in 2019, so I think it's a very important indicator of the success of this project. And it's also expanding micromobility and connections to the other system in the city. In terms of threats, we always, as we see in a lot of Latin American cities, I'm talking about Latin American cities because I come from Brazil, I see this happening. So we can have like operation service cuts depending on the city budget. Unfortunately, Colombia had a history of violence and terrorist attacks. It's not, it doesn't have for a long time, but the Metrocable is really easy to be like a target for those attacks. And of course, there is a high cost of maintenance and the aging infrastructure for the system. And now we're going to talk about a social group that we chose. We chose the elderly because we think they are the ones we can see a lot of benefits of using the Metrocable. So when you are 60 years plus, you are likely taking the public transportation, especially if you're from a low-income area, which are the comunas. And walking in those hilly areas is really challenging. So you need options. And if you don't have a public transportation option, you'll probably be more isolated. And you need to go to the city to see the doctor, to have like healthcare appointments. So the lack of transportation can be really challenging and making it more unequal if you are an elderly person. So the transformation we see with the Metrocable is the suspension of access. So now you can go to the city center to use, of course, the healthcare, but also take your grandchildren to the museum, to the theater, much more easily with the Metrocable, because now you can have a direct access to the city center. And we can see also that the city see this is an important theme, because older residents also pay a lower fare to use the system. And we also can see another improvements in the comunas. So in some of them you have escalators increasing the micromobility inside the comunas for you to reach the stations, so people with limited mobility can access in an easier way the stations. And we also see this in a reduction of neighborhood violence after the Metrocable is installed. So we try to show you all the benefits for the city, but especially for elderly people in these communities. So here are the sources we use for this presentation. We are really happy to show you and go deeper in any of the topics you want. And we hope you got inspired by the great example that Medellin gave to the world, and especially to Latin American cities. Thank you so much.
Thank you.